The final countdown. Yeah. I think that's the song. I don't know if it's the final countdown is the song it's supposed to be doing. I tried. And welcome back. Thank y'all for joining me again. As you know, we do all kind of nerd stuff here, and we're gonna keep our nerd thing going. It's Batman week. We're gonna get into more Batman. Today I have my countdown for the best to not so best Batman films. And before I get started, we're going to talk about special honorable mention for a couple of films that can't quite say reach the top 10 aspect of this countdown. Batman Mask of the Phantasm. If I were adding animated films, this would probably be my number two. That's probably, that's one of the best Batman movies of all time. And I love it. If you're talking about the origin of Batman and all that jazz, it's just really good. Give it a watch. Another special honorable mention is another animated film, Batman Under the Red Hood. It chronologues the death of Jason Todd, which was an interesting event that happened in the comics where people got to vote whether or not he died, and people voted to kill him, and the Joker ultimately killed him. He comes back later on down the road, but really good story arc. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Number 10, we're going to start with 1966, Adam West, Burt Ward, Batman. Without the 1960s Batman, we don't get Batman in the pop cultural psyche, so it's important that we have this one. If you have time to go watch it, check it out. You'll enjoy it. It's goofy. It's ridiculous, but that's what we love about it. It's what we loved about Adam West. God rest his soul. Number 9, Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin. Here's what's easy to do. It's easy to shit on Batman and Robin because it's ridiculous. It's hammy. It's campy. But that's kind of what Joel was going for. They were trying to get away from the kind of dark scariness of the Burton era Batman and make a more merchandisable, kid-friendly, easy to approach Batman. And I don't think the audience of the time really understood that and respected that. So it got really easy to hate the film. I remember being a kid going to see it. I thought it was fun. If you were younger than 12, you probably thought it was amazing. It's probably a slog to get through as an adult. But at the same time, I know it gets this rap for not being so good. It does have this really hard to watch quality because Arnold and Uma and everyone's just hamming it up. But that was the point. I put it low on the list because it's still kind of a cringy thing to watch. But I do want to put a special respect on it. I really respect Joel Schumacher. Number 8, Batman versus Superman. It's bad. Now, are there things enjoyable about it? Yes. The tone of all these kind of comics that they took from the Dark Knight Returns and the Death of Superman story arc, and there's just a lot of things that they blended into one film, and they were trying to capitalize off of the excitement of team-up movies at the moment, ride the wave of the Avengers. I remember when this film was first announced, it was at Comic-Con 2 months after Man of Steel first came out in 2013. So it seemed like the smart and the best move is to hurry up and get these two on screen. But this really struggles from a problem of narrative focus, characters really not being able to be fleshed out, a disappointing final showdown fight between Batman and Superman, being bloated. It was very gaudy and up its own ass, and it ends up being something interesting to look at and kind of a cautionary tale, but that's what I got to say about it. Number 7, I'm going to go for Batman Forever. Probably, again, in that sense of campiness that Joel Schumacher was looking for to escape the criticism that not the Dark Knight, but Batman Returns ended up getting from parent groups. They brought in Joel Schumacher to kind of lighten up the tone, make this something they can make toys out of. They got Jim Carrey involved, and he was blowing up in the 90s. He was the right guy to call at the right time, even though they kind of wanted Robin Williams first. Jim Carrey still came in, and if you grew up in the 90s, Jim Carrey was the Riddler, and he follows a lot of these kind of gimmicks and those moods that we get from the 1960s Riddler, and he killed it. But ultimately, the film kind of struggles a little bit from being maybe too campy for a lot of people's taste. So I can't say it's a bad movie, but it's still not this top tier that we're getting ready to get into. Number 6, The Dark Knight Rises. I know I might catch hell for this one because a lot of people enjoyed it. And there are things to enjoy in The Dark Knight Rises. But it has some issues with editing, some issues with pace. convoluted story that kind of keep it from being as good as it probably could have been. I think Christopher Nolan, in my the way I watched the film, what I feel from it is it felt like let's just get this story over with. Let's get Batman over so I can move on, do other cool things. He just did Inception. His mind was really on other tasks. That's what I feel, and it feels like a contractual obligation to wrap this up. Outside of Tom Hardy coming up with this very interesting character, Bane, because that ain't the comics. Outside of him coming up with a very cool villain that also ends up being more interesting than Batman, just like The Dark Knight did, you have nothing in a reveal that when Talia al Ghul shows up, spoiler warning, when Talia al Ghul shows up, that it doesn't really make it better. It just feels like let's just bring it all full circle so we can wrap this up. So The Dark Knight Rises will remain at number 6 for me. Number 5, Batman. In 1989, Tim Burton stepped up with the Batman film. Now, this is really difficult because if you grew up in the 60s and the 70s, in your mind, it's all Adam West. In the pop cultural psyche, there was no other Batman than this guy. But if you were reading the comic books and you knew that there was this gothic night terror known as Batman throughout, from like the 30s to modern times, this was a treat for you. Now, funny enough, when Michael Keaton was originally cast as Batman, people didn't like it. It was just like when Heath Ledger got cast. People threw a fit. People even were sending in notes to Warner Brothers about the type of mistakes they made. But once it dropped in 1989, Michael Keaton proved him wrong. Tim Burton proved him wrong, falling into this wonderful aesthetic that is Tim Burton. And it's just this very fun to watch film. It doesn't age too well graphically, but what you get is Hall of Fame performance from Jack Nicholson. Can't imagine who else they could have cast to play this Joker. Nails it. Joker the gangster, Joker the menace. And I love everything he did here. This is a very good film. Highly advise you watch it. And you're probably thinking, how in the world did you make this number 5? Well, just follow along with me. Number 4, Batman Returns. I know you're probably going, Batman Returns isn't as good as Batman. In my view, it is. The goth aesthetic that is Tim Burton is a wonderful match. It's a match made in heaven that fits exactly who Batman is inside of a world that only the guy who came up with Edward Scissorhands and Beetlejuice and Ed Wood, this is the guy that you want at the wheel. Danny Elfman Danny Elfman did little things, but I think they replaced him for a second there because of some beef that he had with Tim Burton. But the music is still rich. You get Danny DeVito coming in doing his Penguin, out of this world, off the wall, this monstrosity version of himself, and Michelle Pfeiffer. Come on, y'all. Like, we've seen Anne Hathaway do it. We've seen Halle Berry do it. We just saw Zoe do it. They all did a good job their way, but Michelle Pfeiffer was iconic. So I have to say, on the sense of aesthetic, the sense of a follow-up that just even more of what we got in the first movie, but even better this time, I love Batman Returns. Number 3, Batman Begins. The tightest Batman story that you can get is Batman Begins. Christopher Nolan, after a 8-year hiatus, because let's be honest, Batman Returns kind of killed the franchise, and Warner Brothers took a long break. They didn't know what to do, understandably so. Christopher Nolan shows up with a very tight script, and he turns out a Batman movie that is, for the first time, getting to see where does this guy come from. If you were reading the comics, you knew where he came from. If you were watching the cartoons, you kind of knew where he came from. But now on screen, Christian Bale brings a different heart and emotion to this guy who wants to right the wrong of his past by becoming legend. And you have cast people like Liam Neeson, of course, Christian Bale. Michael Caine shows up to play this very fatherly and mature Alfred, who's what Bruce needs. So it's a really good story. The way they choose to cross-cut the current events across the back events, very different way to do it, but it works in this film. I think of all the Batman films, it's tightest narratively. It's the best. It's the best story of the Batman live-action films. I love it. Please check that one out. And number 2 comes down to these final 2. The Batman. I just did my review of it. Hopefully you checked it out. I loved it. I really did. I thought these performances, the music, the aesthetic, it was nailed. They did everything that I needed to feel a Batman movie, especially if I were watching it in 2000. but it's 2022. And I feel like I wanted a little bit more. I need a little bit of a tighter story. Um, probably some little editing moving around here and there about when certain events happen. A little more show and less tell. But overall, this is a masterpiece of a Batman film. I loved it. Even if it's 3 hours, time may be an issue for some people, but I feel that it filled itself well enough. So I love it. Just Matt Reeves, do more of that. Do more of that. And number one, The Dark Knight. Come on, y'all. Like, I know that, you know, we just saw this movie and recency bias may hit us all where we feel like, oh, no, man, the Batman was better. The Dark Knight is time tested. The performances, everyone is on their A game. Heath Ledger, God rest his soul, created the Joker from scratch. And by from scratch, he's taking a little bit of Sid Vicious. He's taking a little bit of Clockwork Orange. He's making this psychological terror of a Joker who creates villains and terrorizes the heroes. And I just feel like, wow, that alone, that's something that every film's chasing. And if we're honest, the Riddler is in the current Batman movie is really just following this mold of trying to be smarter and darker than Batman and make Batman do something he doesn't really want to do. So that's just a reality of how great a performance that was. On top of that, or underneath that, or whatever helps that work even better, Christopher Nolan was working at the height of his power. His storytelling, every character is evolved and involved with some other character in some way that reveals something special about them. Harvey Dent ain't all that great. Bruce Wayne isn't all that dedicated to being Batman. You know, like Commissioner Gordon, he's not all squeaky clean either. Everyone has edges, and they do this really good job of telling the story. And in the end, they don't win. Batman and Gordon have to compromise. The Joker really wins. When you watch this film, you're like, damn, like he really is the Dark Knight. This wasn't a win. And I really love that film. These are, again, my opinions. Your opinion matters more than mine in your thinking life. So please check these films out. Develop your own thoughts and let me know in the comments what you think. Again, thank y'all so much for following me. If you like my content, share, hit the little like button, and we can do this again. Thank you so much. Y'all have a great one. That was good. I think that was a good one. We did a good job.
What?
Oh yeah, pause the Batman mask. I can just put that on.
Okay.
That'll be mine. All right. No, that's stupid.